Criminal Code of Cambodia, 2009, General Reasons which affect the enforcement of penalties. Title 5, General Reasons which affect the enforcement of penalties, Chapter 1, Prescription of the penalties, Article 142, Power of prescription. At the expiration of prescription, the penalty can no longer be executed. Article 143, Non-Extinguishment of prescription for certain crimes. The penalties pronounced for genocide and for crimes against humanity and war crimes are inextinguishable. In addition to the crimes as mentioned above, specific laws may determine the non-extinguishability of prescription for other crimes. Article 144, Prescription duration of felony, misdemeanor, petty crime. The penalties pronounced for a felony are prescribed for 20 years. The penalties pronounced for a misdemeanor are prescribed for 5 years. The penalties pronounced for a petty crime are prescribed for 1 year. Article 145, Starting of time limit. The time limit of 20 years, 5 years, and 1 year mentioned in Article 144, prescription duration of felony, misdemeanor, petty crime, starts from the date on which the decision for the sentence became definitive. In addition to the crimes as mentioned above, specific laws may determine the non-extinguishability of prescription for other crimes. Article 146, Prescription of civil obligation resulting from criminal decision. The obligations of a civil nature resulting from a final criminal decision are extinguished in accordance with the rules of the Civil Code. Chapter 2, Grace, Article 147, Definition and Power of Grace. The grace as defined in Article 27 of the Constitution waives the convicted person from carrying out the penalty. Article 148, Compensation of damage to victim in case of grace, except for the provision contrary to the royal decree. The grace does not hinder the right for the victim to obtain the compensation for his/her damage. Chapter 3. General amnesty. Article 149, Definition and Power of amnesty. The general amnesty, as defined in Article 90 of the Constitution, waives all sentences related to the amnesty law. Penalties cannot carry out. Penalties which are being executed are eventually terminated. However, fines and court fees which are already paid cannot be refunded from the state. Article 150, Amnesty and revocation of suspended sentence. When the suspended sentence was revoked by means of subsequent conviction, the general amnesty of this conviction restores the previous suspended sentence. Article 151, Compensation of damage to victims in case of amnesty. Except it is provided otherwise in the law. The general amnesty does not hinder the right for the victim to obtain the compensation for his/her damage. Chapter 4. Arrangement and revocation of certain additional convictions. Article 152, Conditions for modification of certain additional convictions. In case of sentences for additional penalties specified in points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 15, and 16 of Article 59. Categories of additional punishments, the court may order either an arrangement for modification or revocation of one or several penalties if the following conditions are fulfilled. 1. The disturb to the public order resulting from the offense has come to an end. 2. Damage was repaired. 3. The decision for an arrangement for modification or revocation is of a nature that promotes the social reintegration of the offender. The court receives request from the prosecutor upon his/her own initiatives or at the request of the convicted person. The court makes decision at the public hearing after listening to comments of the representative of the prosecutor, the convicted person, and eventually his/her lawyer. Article 153, Re-establishment in part or in whole of civil rights. In case of deprivation of civil rights, the court may re-establish the entirety of civil rights as described in Article 61, civil rights that may be deprived, or some of them. Article 154, Arrangement for modification or revocation of prohibition. The court may arrange for modification or revocation of 1. Prohibition from pursuing a professional or social activity. 2. Prohibition from driving a motor vehicle. Article 155, Restitution of driver's license. In case of suspension of the driver's license, the court may order the restitution of the driver's license. Article 156, Modification to the rule on prohibition against taking residency. In case of the conviction which prohibits against taking residency, the court may modify the modalities of surveillance measures. In case of emergency, the prosecutor may authorize a temporary residency which does not exceed 8 days in the prohibited areas. The prosecutor informs the court of this action. The Ministry of Interior and Ministry of National Defense are notified of the court and the prosecutor decisions. Article 157, Modification to prohibition against leaving the territory of the Kingdom of Cambodia. The court may lift the prohibition against leaving the territory of the Kingdom of Cambodia. The court may, if it deems necessary, maintain certain conditions. Article 158, Modification to prohibition against entering the territory of the Kingdom of Cambodia. The court may lift the prohibition against taking residency and entering the territory of the Kingdom of Cambodia by a convicted foreigner. However, the prosecutor must first seek advice from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in advance and submit it to the court. The court is not bound by this advice. Article 159, Modification to expulsion, closure and prohibition against operating businesses. The court may arrange the modification or termination of the following penalties. 1. Expulsion from the public marketplaces. 2. Closure of an establishment. 3. Prohibition against operating an establishment open to the public or utilized by the public.